He just broke the cordon and came right in front of us. So I and my colleague, we were walking, with our bags on the shoulders. And you can imagine after 45 miles all day long. And he suddenly faced him. He had this mustache. And he said, Sala Fazavi, abhi bhi moos rakha hai? Which meant, you Punjabi idiot, you're still putting on this mustache, which is a sign of chivalry. And later on, we laughed our guts out. In the middle of the day, or 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, they'll suddenly come in summers and make us stand in the ground on scorching heat with no cover, whatever we were there, and immediately we'll go out, giving us no time to pick anything. And the same they would do in very cold winters. At 12 or 1 o'clock at night, they'll suddenly start kicking our beds, get out, get out, get out, get out. And we will shiver outside. At home, I couldn't stop eating. I was eating roti after roti after roti after roti. That was my psychological problem. My inner hunger just sprang up and didn't order stopping. Then I had asked my mother, God bless her soul, to nudge me. And that's it, no more. Everybody's finished. So then I'll stop. I joined the army as a cadet in PMA 1968. And when we went to war in 1971, which is to say when my unit moved from Moeed Camp, where I was posted, to Dhaka, at that time I was a lieutenant. The task was to cleanse the land from external forces which had infested East Pakistan by then, that is to say Indians, who were in the garb of civilians assisting the rebel forces. That was the pattern, and we stayed on the borders until the war began in November 1971. After the surrender, first thing that happened was that the surrender took place in Dhaka by General Niazi on the 16th of December 1971. The place I was fighting in was called Bhairab Bazaar, close to Sylhet. And there we kept on fighting because we didn't get the message that surrender has taken place. We kept fighting for 2 days. I was the one who happened to get the message from an Indian captain while I was planning a local attack, and he intercepted my wireless while I was talking to my own gunners to provide me with artillery support. We had only 2 guns there. And he said, stop this nonsense because General Niazi has surrendered. And I thought, you're pulling my leg. He insisted, and we exchanged, explicit, anyways. So I then walked over to my Brigadier Sadullah Khan, a great man. And the general also happened to be there, Qazi Majid, who was our div commander. We were all in one place. And they asked me to stop because the general said, I know he must have surrendered. So we surrendered on the 18th. Now what was the surrender? For us, surrender was a word. We had not known its spellings. We were never trained to surrender. Now what to do? And we had no idea how to go about this. Then communication was established between the Indian brigadier and our brigadier, Brigadier Sadullah, over the wireless. And you wouldn't believe it that we asked them to bring some dal and flour, atta, so that our troops can have something to eat. I hadn't eaten for the past 4 or 5 days because there was nothing. We were just lying about. So when the surrender took place, we they said there will be ceremony, like in Dhaka, the ceremony took place. You'll drop your weapons and go back. And Brigadier Sadullah Khan said nothing of the sort. Now we will surrender, but we will tell you how we surrender. And you will have to take it. He said, they said, no, you can't say that. You're a prisoner of war. Do you know that? I said, yes, I'm not a prisoner yet. We still have our arms. If you don't accept that, then you're free to come and get it from us. So the Indians were very clever. They didn't want to create another war after the surrender had taken place in the headquarters. So they said, oh, okay, what do you want? So we were told to dump our weapons in an empty pond after disabling it completely. So we destroyed our firing mechanism and threw grenades in barrels of the guns, broke the wireless from inside, left every equipment and weapon incapacitated, and then dumped it in a pond. Coming to what happened to us after that, we were asked to go to Dhaka. Now from Baram Bazar to Dhaka is around 45 miles or so. And I remember when I was going with my troops, with another major, we walked 45 miles with our pack on our shoulder. 5 o'clock we started to walk. And I think we reached, I don't remember the time, but it was evening time. There was still light when we entered Dhaka. And the Indians were escorting us. There was a railway line. We walked on that railway line, all that distance. Of course, without food. We had water, but without food. When we reached there, the funny thing happened. The major next to me, he was very well built. I mean, my thighs was like his biceps. And he had a mustache. He was fair looking, Pathan, from Charsada. And we entered Dhaka, you can say the outskirts. And the Bengalis were standing on the roadside, booing us and, calling us names and all that stuff, which was quite natural because they had just been liberated 2 days ago, 3 days ago. And Indians were keeping them away from us. That was an understanding. I said, if you can't do that, then we would go with our weapons and defend ourselves. In any event, we were walking and there were slogans and shouting. And suddenly one small Bengali, small means he was small in size. He was a mighty man because they had liberated their country, but he was small in size. He just broke the cordon and came right in front of us. So I and my colleague, we were walking, with our bags on the shoulders. And you can imagine after 45 miles all day long. And he suddenly faced him. He had this mustache. And he said, Sala Fazavi, abhi bhi moos rakha hai? Which meant, you Punjabi idiot, you're still putting on this mustache, which is a sign of chivalry, and later on we laughed our guts out. Tried to find humor also in, whatever happens, but we don't moan all the time. So that poor chap, he cut his mustache, never had a mustache ever again, and he said, I'm not even a Punjabi. So in Dhaka, then we were in our own cantonment, where we were put in barracks for our troops. So the Red Cross then entered in the scene, the International Red Cross Committee of ICRC. They started to register us, which unit, what name, what rank. And they were compiling a list of who survived and who didn't. My name got lost somewhere in the list. My family was told I'm missing, believed killed for nearly a month or so. And later on it was clarified. In any event, After that assassination, India was taking time to set up prisoner of war camps in India. And they were also confused, flabbergasted. They didn't know how to organize this massive movement. One misnomer that in Pakistan people, or generally people call it, we were 90,000 prisoners of war. We were 90,000 prisoners, but out of those, the army was nearly half, 40-something thousand. Beyond that, there were not enough troops there. While we were prisoners of war, we were too many. Like, for instance, I was in a camp which was in the heart of Indian map. If you just threw a dart in the middle, I was there. It was called Dhana Sagar, Madhya Pradesh. And there we were 14,000 prisoners, including civilians, mind you. All civilians and army were put together, and we were 350 officers, civilians and army, navy. We didn't have Air Force officers. The Navy officers were with us. So we were too many for them to be tortured or given any illegal treatment. They were supposed to, under the Geneva Convention, give us hard work and task to perform, which meant they could take us out and give us, sledge and hammer to break the stone or whatever for their purposes. They never dared to do that, because what we felt was they were too scared of our size. 350 officers, unarmed though, yet. So they kept distance. They never came close to us. But the kind of torture that they gave was entirely unique. Like, for instance, we were given food every morning delivered at the door for the day. There was no reserve. There was no atta storage. There was no dal storage. There was no oil storage. A day's dry ration was left at the door, which included even the log also for burning in the kitchen. We had our own cooks from the army. They will cook for us, so officers didn't need to cook. Invariably, they will leave wet log and wood, which will never burn, so we will have no food. Then they started to give us crushed glass in dal, which when we cooked, it came into our mouth and we stopped eating. There was another pattern of their search, security search. They would suddenly come and say, "Get out, everybody out." So they would go through our stuff, whatever stuff we had, to look for any weapon, any instrument that could assist us in our escape from the prison. No, that would happen in that land, Madhya Pradesh, of extreme weathers, where winters were very cold and summers were very hot. In the middle of the day, or 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, they'll suddenly come in summers and make us stand in the ground on scorching heat with no cover, whatever we were there, and immediately we'll go out, giving us no time to pick anything. And the same they would do in very cold winters. At 12 or 1 o'clock at night, they'll suddenly start kicking our beds, "Get out, get out, get out, get out." And we will shiver outside. Now all that was, in a way, acceptable to us in the sense that we were soldiers. We were trained to be fit, trained to be ready to face anything, and then knowing that we were prisoners, knowing that we could be treated harshly. And then there was intellectual, as far as I am concerned, torture. I did a painting. In fact, I started to paint there from nothing. I reproduced one of the greatest paintings ever made by John Constable, called The Hay Vane. which is my favorite. I've done it 3 times. And that painting was stolen by the camp commandant under the pretext of getting it framed for me, for which my friends all collected money. Money we didn't have, we were given tokens. We were given pay 54 rupees per month. So every officer received that money as pay. What we would use that for is the toothpaste and brush and, you name it, day-to-day use. And cigarettes. Yeah, I used to smoke, so cigarette used to cost money. So those of my friends who didn't smoke, they had surplus money. They were very rich, So they collected those coupons and said, Ifti will have your painting framed. Everybody watched me doing that in that camp. So he took that away. Captain Sharma was his name, and never returned that painting. And then when my repatriation was announced, which is to say when I was to be moved to Pakistan, the Red Cross team, I said, hang on a second, my painting. So a French ICRC man, he said to me, oh, he took your painting. You say, I said, yes, everybody knows that. He said, listen, I can only advise you to rethink about this. If you raise this matter, we will raise it. We will say, okay, bring his painting first. They will hold an inquiry, which means the very first step would be to drop your name from next week's train, so you're not going back because you'll be part of the inquiry. And then you may well be the last person to ever leave Indian soil and never get the painting, because they will not accept the blame. The inquiry will at the end say, no such evidence was provided, so there was no such thing that happened. You want your painting or you want to go and meet your mom? I said, I want to meet my mom. So I left it. That was a torture of a kind. And there are other stories. The best site, there were 2 best sites on the way. One was Taj Mahal. The train circled around Taj Mahal, so we had a long, good look at Taj Mahal. And at one station, when the train stopped, there was one Indian major in uniform, standing and looking right across my window where I was looking outside the platform, at the platform. And I read his nameplate, it said Aslam. And there were tears running through his eyes, that Indian major. He didn't utter a word, he just stood there. And that I can't forget. Then we crossed the border, I can't forget 2 things that happened. Number 1, I wanted to read the hoardings. There were hoardings welcoming us. We were given a tremendous welcome by the government. And when I crossed the line, there was such thick pile of red carpet that I remember tumbling over it. It was so soft that I tumbled. And of course I went into sajda first. And the tears were rolling through my eyes. I couldn't read the hoardings slogans, I wanted to read as to what is written. We were received by Muhammad Ali, Zeba, and the Chief Minister Hanif Rame at that time. So every day, whenever the train was coming, such celebrities were asked to go and welcome us. And then Rangers had 2 soldiers, nearly 7 feet tall. They had red flower petals, rose petals in their hands, bag of that. And every soldier passed underneath. Of course, nobody was 7 feet tall. So they were showering petals on us. But then we had lunch, where we changed the currency, because in our absence, the currency had demonetized. So we had old notes, I had 180 rupees, one Parker pen, one nail cutter. This was my total asset that I brought from me there. And I wanted to change those 180 rupees, which they did, and gave us the new notes, old were destroyed. But then there was lunch. I have seen the world since then. I have never, ever seen a lunch like that. The lunch was ordered to include almost anything that was cooked in Pakistan. So that if any one of us wanted to have, say, Quetta Saji, the Saji was there. Anybody having Maghaz was there. You name it, anything. Of course, we couldn't eat because we were not used to eating that much. Of course, and it did become my problem later on that when I started to eat, I couldn't stop. At home, I couldn't stop eating. I was eating roti after roti after roti after roti. That was my psychological problem. My inner hunger just sprang up and didn't order stopping. Then I had asked my mother, God bless her soul, to nudge me. And that's it, no more. Everybody is finished. So then I'll stop. So that kind of trauma remained. This was one problem I told you about food. It literally was a problem. Secondly, I had no concept of the worth of money. I had money and I didn't know if 500 rupees, 100 rupees or 50 rupees or 20 rupees were any different. So if I gave something, I was not bothered about the change that was supposed to be given to me, or if I by mistake gave more money and I didn't. So I had no idea of the worth of a note or currency. Second, and I was to be assisted in that. For God's sake, it only means he's asking 15 rupees, you're giving him 50 rupees. They take the money back. Secondly, I bought my very first car with the saving. We were continued to pay our salary, unprecedented in the world. No prisoner of wars are ever given their salary. Our perks. Mr. Bhutto was the Prime Minister then. He had ordered that every prisoner of war returning home will be given their full salary since they left this place to East Pakistan. So I had money with which I could buy a car. My family had saved my money. So Volkswagen Beetle was my first car. And when I would drive it, you will not believe it, I will drive it at 90, 100 miles an hour. In the roads of those days when there was no motorway. And I never thought I was going fast. If anybody sat next to me, they will suddenly hold my hand and pray to me, for heaven's sake. I said, what happened? That you're flying. And that slowly dawned on me that speed is something that I have to control. I didn't want to accept the martial law in those times. I had seen the worst of it. I didn't want to get that again. So this remained with me. Then, of course, the psyche, the totality of the psyche also had different shades, which are not common and normal. And a lot of people say, you're not a normal person, not in the negative sense, but diversified senses. And all that I attribute to such experiences in my life.